Something has been weighing on me for a long time. Something I haven't said out loud, because once I do, there's no going back. This message is not just for the fans, not just for the people who watch from the sidelines and admire from a distance. This message is for those who have felt something shifting, not just in Korea, not just in music, but in life itself. I'm gonna say things I was told never to say. Things that might cost me my peace. Things that could change how you see everything from fame to freedom to what it really means to belong. So if you're watching this, if you're listening right now, don't walk away. Don't scroll. Don't silence this moment. I need you to stay with me until the very end, because what I'm about to tell you is the truth. No one in Korea wants to admit. And once you know, you'll never unknow it. Let me ask you something. Where are you right now? Where are you watching this from? What country? What city? Type it in the comments. I want to know who's here, because this isn't just about me. This is about us. This is about every person who's ever felt like their silence was expected, like their heart didn't fit the mold of their homeland, like their dreams had a border they weren't allowed to cross. If you've ever felt like that, if you've ever questioned whether it's okay to want more, to want something different, then this message is for you. And I promise you, if you stay with me, I will tell you what no one else is saying. And that revelation might just change the way you see everything. But first, hit like, subscribe, share this with someone who needs it, because silence is what built this prison, and we're not going to stay silent anymore. This story isn't just about a decision I made. It's about a war I've been fighting inside myself for years. It's about why, despite all the success, the lights, the stages, the awards, I still can't see a future for myself in the very country that raised me. And I'm not alone, not even close. This isn't a story about one man. This is a story about 7 brothers, about one nation, and about what it costs to love something that no longer loves you back. I will get to that moment. The moment I knew I couldn't start a family here. The moment I looked at a blank wall in my apartment and whispered something I never thought I'd say. Maybe I have to leave Korea. But before we go there, I need to show you what led up to it. For years, we gave everything. BTS was never just a group. We were a bond formed under pressure. Fire forged. I watched Yoongi sacrifice his body to beats he never had time to recover from. I saw Jin sit alone backstage, sometimes smiling for fans while knowing his military clock was ticking. I remember the night Namjoon stood by the river and said nothing for once. The man with all the words was quiet. I saw Jimin break, quietly, without announcement. One day he was dancing. The next, he wasn't speaking. His eyes stopped shining. And when I asked him what was wrong, he just said, "It's hard to be soft in a country that sees your softness as weakness." Taehyung, he tried to keep us laughing, but even he knew the walls were closing in. One night, after a concert in Busan, we sat in the dark van, sweat still on our necks, and he whispered, "Do you think we'll ever be allowed to just be human?" I didn't answer. None of us did. See, what people don't understand is that in Korea, you don't just grow up. You grow into expectations. Your success is not yours. It's a national product. Your failures, they're betrayals. When we rose, we were told we were sons of the country. Icons. Symbols of national pride. But when we began to speak differently, to want rest, to speak out on emotions, to not want to perform masculinity the way it's expected here, we became inconvenient. You don't know how many conversations happen behind closed doors. You don't know how many scripts are edited, how many interviews are pre-cleared, how many real moments are deemed dangerous to the national image. You know what they said when Taehyung started posting vintage art and jazz? Too eccentric. When Jimin dyed his hair pink and wore pearls to Paris? Too feminine. When Hoseok danced barefoot in a minimalist studio? Too abstract. Not enough K-pop appeal. When I cried during our last festa, they told me, "Don't show that. You're the strong one. Jungkook doesn't cry." But I do. And I did. Because somewhere along the way, we stopped being people. We became projections. We became tools. Our bodies became schedules. Our smiles became armor. Our future became a political chess piece. And I tried to carry it. I did. I wanted to be the golden maknae. I wanted to be the one who never broke, who could take it all, who made the Nuna fans proud, who the mothers could show to their daughters and say, "That's a good boy. That's Korea's boy." But I'm not a boy anymore. I'm a man. And men have to make decisions even when they're hard. This is where it gets real. A few months ago, I was alone in Tokyo. I had just finished a private session. No cameras, no fans. Just me. And I was walking through the streets, no mask, no cap. Just air. Just freedom. I saw a father pushing a stroller. His daughter was laughing. They weren't hiding. They weren't being watched. No one was taking pictures. And something cracked in me. Not because I wanted that life right away, but because I realized something. In Korea, I might never get to have that life. Not truly. Because here, love has rules. Marriage has guidelines. Family has standards. And freedom? Freedom is conditional. You want to date? Better hide. You want to marry? Better get approval. You want kids? You better make sure they fit into the perfect public image of what a BTS child should be. But how do you raise a child in a country where you, their father, are not even allowed to be whole? I've seen what happens when idols get married, when they announce a pregnancy, when they show their humanity. They are destroyed. Their families are doxxed, their children are shamed, their wives are bullied, their past is weaponized. And I ask myself, do I want to bring a child into that? Do I want to marry someone and tell her, we can love, but only in private. We can raise our kids, but only behind gates. You can be my wife, but not in the eyes of the people who made me. It's not just fear, it's grief. Grief for a future that should have been ours. Because I love Korea. I love its rivers, its smells, its seasons. I love the sound of my mother's voice when she says, "Have you eaten?" I love the way my hometown tastes on rainy mornings. But I also know Korea is not safe for my wholeness. Not yet. And that is why for now, I can't start a family here. Not because I don't want one, but because I want my child to grow up in truth. And that truth is something I haven't been allowed to fully live yet. Do you understand that? Let me ask you, what kind of world do you want to raise your children in? One where love is private and performance is public, or one where authenticity is honored? Type your answer. Be honest. Don't pretend. Because maybe you felt this too. Maybe not as an idol, but as a teacher, a mother, a student, a dreamer. Maybe you've been told to hide your real self, to conform, to make others comfortable. And maybe, like me, you're done hiding. This is not a goodbye to Korea. This is not bitterness. This is clarity. This is truth. This is the beginning of a new kind of conversation. Because if people like me don't speak, who will? If we all 7 of us don't show the cost of silence, how will change ever come? We've each carried this in different ways. Namjoon writes about it in poems no one will read. Yoongi hides it in lyrics only the brave decode. Jin jokes about it, but you can hear the ache between his laughs. And Jimin, he carries it in his body. Every performance, every tear, every smile that looks just a second too practiced. We are not just entertainers. We are human beings trying to heal in public while being told to smile. But healing requires honesty. And this is mine. I don't know what the next few years will look like. I don't know where I'll plant roots. But I know one thing. I will not start a family in a place that asks me to hide the very heart that wants to give that family life. I owe them more than that. I owe myself more than that. And maybe, just maybe, by speaking this aloud, by breaking this silence, I've already begun. So I'm asking you now, what truth are you no longer willing to hide? Write it, speak it, send it to someone you trust. And don't stop until your silence becomes your song. This is just the beginning. There's something I haven't told you yet. Not because I was afraid, though I was, but because I didn't know if anyone would listen. You see, the truth doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it knocks quietly. Sometimes it waits outside while the world keeps moving. And if you don't stop, if you don't listen closely, you'll miss it. But if you're still here, if you heard what I said before, and you're still watching, then you're one of the few. And this message, this one, it's for you. Because what I told you last time, that was just the surface. That was the open wound. But beneath that wound, beneath the reasons I said I couldn't build a family in Korea, lies something deeper. Something harder. Something older than even BTS. A pattern, a weight, A silence that stretches back further than my debut stage, further than the training room, further than my first song. It starts with the question I was never allowed to ask out loud. What does it cost to belong? Let me show you something. There was a time before the stadiums, before the headlines, before the global charts, when we were just 7 kids with burning lungs and tired eyes. We lived together, trained together, ate ramyeon on the floor because we didn't have enough for meat. I still remember how the hallway light flickered at night, how the hot water never lasted through all 7 showers. And I remember the silence. The silence we carried after the practice room doors closed. The kind that follows exhaustion, yes, but also the kind that follows repression. Because even then, even before the world was watching, we knew there were things we were not allowed to be. Not too loud, not too soft, not too different, never too honest. Every time one of us cried, the staff would say, "Don't show that to fans." Every time we spoke of loneliness, we were told, "People don't want that, they want inspiration." When Namjoon questioned societal norms, they said, "Stick to music." When Jimin spoke about body image, they said, "You'll make people uncomfortable." When Taehyung wanted to release a song without structure, pure jazz, no hook, they said, "That's not commercial." And when I said I wanted to sing about the fear of growing older without knowing who I really am, they said, "Jungkook, you're the golden one. You don't get to be unsure." Do you see? From the beginning, we were building something, but not with bricks of freedom. No, we built with filters, edits, expectations, and slowly, unknowingly, we each began erasing parts of ourselves. That's what it means to be loved conditionally. That's what it means to be everyone's and yet no one's. You become the idea people want to hold, not the man you are becoming. And for years, I accepted that. I thought, this is the price. This is what it means to be successful. To give yourself away, piece by piece, for the good of the dream, for the group, for the country. But you know what no one tells you? That if you give enough of yourself away, you forget what was ever yours to begin with. I forgot how to be alone. I forgot how to speak without apologizing. I forgot how to want without guilt. And worst of all, I forgot how to envision a future that wasn't shaped by fear. Because every time I imagined starting a family, I'd see the headlines. BTS's Jungkook spotted with woman army divided. Who is the mystery wife? Netizens react. Is this the end of the golden maknae era? As if love was a betrayal. As if fatherhood was a scandal. As if choosing a quiet life was a crime against the machine that made me. Let me ask you something. If your own joy became someone else's disappointment, would you still pursue it? Would you still reach for love knowing it might cost you everything? That's the war I fight every day, and I'm not the only one. Yoongi once told me, "You think you'll be free when the work slows down, but the truth is, the cage moves with you." And he was right. Because it's not just about Korea. It's not just about the industry. It's about a world that demands performance and punishes reality. You want to see the truth? You have to look beyond the photo books, beyond the curated memories, beyond the highlight reels. You have to ask, what don't they show? They don't show Jin lying awake at night, wondering if he'll return from enlistment to a group that's whole. They don't show Hoseok crying behind the curtains, holding his breath before a solo stage, because he doesn't want to mess up the group's reputation. They don't show Namjoon walking for hours alone, trying to find something, anything that feels real in a life built on applause. And they don't show me standing in the mirror night after night, asking myself, if I wasn't Jungkook of BTS, would I still know how to love? Now, maybe you think this is too heavy. Maybe you wanted a lighter story, something glamorous, something pretty. But I told you, this is not that kind of message. This is the kind that stays with you. The kind that you carry into your own silence. The kind that might wake you up at 2 a.m. and ask, who am I really living for? So let me ask you again, who are you living for? Who are you hiding for? Whose expectations have become your prison? Write it in the comments. Say it out loud. Because the moment you name it, it starts to lose power. That's what I had to do. That night in Tokyo, after I saw that father and daughter, I went back to the hotel. I turned off my phone. No messages, no Weverse, no staff notes, just silence. And I wrote a letter. Not for the fans, not for my members, not even for my future wife or children. I wrote it for myself. I won't read all of it here, not yet. But I'll tell you the line that made my hands shake. I forgive you for not knowing how to belong. You were never broken, just brave in a world that asked you to be small. I sat with those words for hours, because for the first time, I realized maybe I didn't need to start a family to prove I was whole. Maybe I needed to become whole before I could give anything to anyone. That's what this moment is about. Not regret, not bitterness, but rebirth, and that rebirth starts with truth. So here's more of mine. I want to be a father someday. I want to walk my daughter to school, holding her hand with no mask on. I want to cook breakfast for my son and let him hear my real voice, not the one I use in interviews, but the soft one, the trembling one, the human one. I want to grow old next to someone who doesn't care how many fans I have, but cares if I sleep well, if I laugh, if I cry. And I want that to happen somewhere I can breathe. Maybe that would be in Seoul someday. I pray it is. But if not, I will go where the sky feels safe. And I will not apologize. Not for growing, not for choosing peace, not for leaving behind a version of myself that never got to speak. Because the truth is, our story is not over. It's just changing. BTS was never about being perfect. It was about choosing each other over and over, even when the world tried to break us. And I believe we'll keep choosing each other, whether in music, in silence, in life, because real family isn't about blood or brand. It's about truth. And the truth is, I love them, all of them. Namjoon, Seokjin, Yoongi, Hoseok, Jimin, Taehyung. They are my brothers, my compass, my mirror. And maybe, just maybe, by finding the courage to speak this aloud, I'm making space for all of us to dream again. To be more than idols, to be men, to be flawed, to be free. Now it's your turn. Tell me, what is one truth you've never said out loud? Type it, write it, whisper it, but don't let it rot in silence, because that silence is where futures go to die. And this is where ours is being born again. There's something about late night conversations that never leave you. Not the loud ones, not the dramatic ones, but the quiet exchanges. The ones where nothing explodes, but everything shifts. Where a single sentence can carve a canyon through your chest. This story begins with one of those nights. It was Jimin. And it wasn't supposed to be anything special. Just another hotel after another show. The usual quiet after the adrenaline fades. The others were asleep or pretending to be. I was lying on the balcony couch, half awake, watching the city lights flicker like fading memories. Jimin walked out barefoot, carrying 2 cups of tea. No cameras, no script. Just 2 men who hadn't spoken honestly in weeks. He handed me the cup without a word, sat beside me. Silence. Then he said it. Do you think we'll ever be allowed to be happy? I didn't answer, because I knew what he meant. And it had nothing to do with fame. See, when someone asks a question like that, they're not asking about schedules or album drops. They're asking about freedom, about love, about what comes after the spotlight dims and your name becomes less of a prayer and more of a past tense. He looked at me again, like real happiness. Waking up next to someone who loves you, not the idea of you. Kids running through the house, no stylists, no NDAs, just life. Still, I said nothing. My throat closed up. Because I had imagined that life too many times. And every time, I buried it deeper, because that dream felt like a betrayal to everything we had built. But Jimin kept talking, voice softer now. I think about it, what kind of father I'd be, if I'd be good, or if all this performance has broken something permanent in me. And that's when I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw it. The exhaustion that wasn't about physical fatigue. The longing that wasn't about romance. The ache that comes from being praised by millions, but still feeling like you have nowhere to put your love. I whispered, sometimes I think we're not allowed to be men. He turned slowly. What do you mean? I stared at the skyline, words trembling. We're allowed to perform masculinity. Strength, discipline, sex appeal. We're allowed to cry during award shows. But we're not allowed to evolve past the version they fell in love with. The moment we grow, choose differently. Love publicly. Age, we're punished. Not directly, but slowly. Through distance, through silence. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. That's the thing with Jimin. He's never needed too many words to understand. I took a deep breath. I'm scared, Hyung. He blinked. Of what? That I'll wake up one day with everything and still feel empty. That I'll have the career, the trophies, the body, the bank account, but no child to laugh with. No partner to grow wrinkled beside. Just echoes of a life I never dared to start. The silence after that was heavy, sacred. Then Jimin said something I'll never forget. You could leave, you know. You could choose something else. You don't have to stay in the script. I looked at him, startled. You mean leave BTS? He shook his head. Not us. Just the expectation, the silence, the idea that you owe everyone your future. You don't. And then the final blow. You owe someone a future who hasn't even been born yet. It hit me like a wave, because I had never thought of it like that. I had been thinking in terms of fans, contracts, legacies. But what about my son, my daughter? What about the little feet running across hardwood floors, asking, why is Appa sad today? Would I look into their eyes and lie, tell them everything is fine? Or would I have the courage to make decisions now that protect their right to see me whole? That's when something shifted in me. I stopped thinking of fatherhood as a risk, and I started thinking of it as a responsibility. But here's the truth. No one prepares you for. Choosing that path doesn't just change your future. It threatens your present. Because the moment I started speaking differently, moving differently, dreaming differently, the machinery around me noticed. The questions in interviews became sharper. The smiles at meetings became tighter. The silence from certain people became louder. And somewhere along the way, I realized something no one tells you about fame. They don't want you to grow. They want you to repeat. Be consistent, be reliable, be profitable. But don't change. Don't question. Don't mature. Because when you do, you become inconvenient. But what they forget is this. Growth is not betrayal. Wanting love is not betrayal. Wanting children is not betrayal. Wanting a life beyond headlines is not betrayal. It's human. So let me ask you, when was the last time you allowed yourself to want without apology? I don't mean surface wants. I don't mean new phones or job promotions. I mean the quiet, sacred wants. The want for peace, for real connection, for a love that sees all of you, even the broken parts. Write it in the comments. Don't hold back. Because maybe, like me, you've been shrinking to fit into someone else's fantasy. And maybe, like me, you're ready to break free. But freedom has a cost. After that night with Jimin, I started changing small things. I stopped apologizing when I didn't want to do variety shows. I asked for more privacy. I started writing lyrics. I didn't show anyone. And I made a list, a real list, of what I wanted to give my future child. Here's part of it. A father who speaks the truth, even when it's hard. A home where love is not hidden, but celebrated. Mornings without shame, evenings without exhaustion. A name that is not weighed down by expectation. And a mother who doesn't have to fear cameras at the grocery store. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But in my world, it's radical. Because in my world, choosing that list means risking everything. The brand, the myth, the silence that sells, and still I choose it. Because someday, my child might ask, Appa, why did you wait so long? And I want to look them in the eyes and say, I didn't. The moment I saw you in my mind, I started walking toward you. That walk has cost me things. Friends, opportunities, favor. But it has also given me something I didn't expect. Clarity. And clarity, once you have it, is unstoppable. So here I am, speaking it out loud. I am not ashamed of wanting a family. I am not ashamed of leaving behind the roles I've outgrown. I am not ashamed of dreaming differently than I did at 20. And if that makes me less of an idol in someone's eyes, so be it. Because I would rather be a whole man to one child than a perfect fantasy to millions. Now I ask you again, what are you willing to lose in order to live honestly? And more importantly, what are you no longer willing to lose? Don't wait until it's too late. Don't wait until you're standing on a balcony wondering if your dreams are even yours anymore. Start now. Speak now. Because truth delayed is a life unlived. And the ones who love you, they will understand, even if they don't yet, even if it takes time, even if the world calls you selfish. Because courage looks selfish to those still living in fear. And that's okay. Let them call it what they will. You call it freedom. You call it home. You call it beginning. There are some messages you never forget. Not because they were loud, not because they were public, but because they arrived at the exact moment your soul needed them. Quiet, undeniable, unshakable. This story begins with a message like that. It came from Taehyung. No camera, no formal talk. Just a voice note sent at 3:12 a.m. I had just gotten back from rehearsal. My voice was raw, my chest tight. I'd been overthinking everything what I said to Jimin, the letter I'd written to myself, the truth I had finally spoken aloud. And right as I collapsed onto the floor of my studio, my phone buzzed. His voice filled the silence. Jungkook, I had a dream about your future last night. He laughed gently, not playful, sad. You were in the garden. There was a child running toward you. You smiled. But right before he reached you, something pulled you back. And I woke up. I froze, not because of what he said, but because I'd had the same dream before. Only in my version, I was the one who pulled away. He continued, quieter now. I need to tell you something I never said before. Something I think you've always known, but no one has ever dared to name. A pause. Then, love in Korea isn't built for people like us. I felt my breath stop, because he said it, he named it. The thing we had all danced around. The thing we swallowed during interviews. The thing we buried beneath sold-out stadiums and fan slogans and award speeches. The truth that here, in the place we were raised, love has rules. Love has expectations. Love has borders. And those borders are not drawn in ink. They are carved into culture, into language, into silence. Taehyung continued, and I swear the tremble in his voice felt like it echoed something ancient inside me. We grew up being told to dream, but no one ever told us what to do when the dream becomes a cage. He exhaled. You've been carrying this alone for too long. I see it in your eyes. I hear it in your lyrics, even when you try to hide. You want more, Kook, and you deserve more. I sat there, phone in hand, heart cracked open. Because Taehyung has always seen me before I see myself. He was the one who noticed when I started holding my breath in crowds. The one who asked if I was okay, even when my smile was perfect. The one who said, years ago, I know you'll be the first to fall in love and the last to admit it. I never told him he was right until that night. I called him. No greeting, no formality, just my voice. Shaky. I don't know if I can stay here. A pause. Then, softly, I know. And that's when I cried. Not the public kind. Not the cinematic kind. The real kind. The kind that sounds like mourning. Because that night, I wasn't grieving a breakup. I was grieving a home. A country I love. A culture I'm proud of. But a place that doesn't know how to hold my heart when it stops performing. You have to understand something. This isn't about rebellion. This isn't about bitterness. This is about clarity. We've spent years giving Korea our youth, our bodies, our tears, our silence. But the moment we asked for space to build a life outside the stage lights, the narrative shifted. Suddenly, we were selfish, ungrateful, dangerous. As if choosing love was betrayal. As if wanting to raise a child without shame was an attack on tradition. But tradition without compassion is not heritage. It's a cage. And I won't pass that cage down to my child. Do you understand? I want my daughter to grow up knowing that love isn't a secret. That her father was a man who stood up for what he believed, even if it cost him everything. I want my son to know that masculinity isn't measured in silence or sacrifice. It's measured in softness, in honesty, in presence. But how do I give them that if I'm not allowed to claim it for myself? That's why Taehyung's words mattered. Because he didn't just see me. He reminded me that my longing isn't a flaw. It's a compass. And that compass is pointing away from where I'm standing now. Let me ask you something. Have you ever stayed in a place longer than you should have, not because it felt right, but because it felt familiar? Have you ever convinced yourself to endure a life that quietly breaks you, simply because the alternative feels too unknown? I have. And it nearly cost me my voice. But not anymore. Because here's what I've realized. Silence doesn't protect you. It only delays the collapse. The moment you speak, the moment you name the truth, the healing begins. It's slow, it's terrifying, but it's real. And I'd rather live in realness than die in comfort. So I told Taehyung everything. About the way I'd been rehearsing my own exit mentally, emotionally, from the life we built. About the family I saw in my dreams. About the guilt I carried for even thinking of leaving. He said something then that cracked me wide open. You're not leaving us. You're leading us. I didn't understand at first. Then he added, someone has to be the first to do it. To say, I choose something else. Not because this isn't beautiful, but because there is more beauty still waiting. That's what family does. They don't just support you. They see you when you can't even see yourself. They hold your vision when your hands are shaking. And in that moment, Taehyung held mine. So I began to walk forward. I started making quiet changes. I asked my team for time, not time off, but time away. Time to think. Time to breathe. I turned down brand deals. I said no to magazine shoots that only wanted the illusion of Jungkook. And I began looking at places, real places, where I might someday raise a child in peace. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't scandalous. It was sacred. Because for the first time, I was choosing me. Not the maknae, not the brand, not the product, me. And in choosing me, I began making space for someone else. Someone not here yet. Someone small, fragile, real. My future. My family. I know what the headlines will say. They'll twist this. They'll say I'm abandoning my roots, that I'm betraying fans. But listen to me carefully. This is not betrayal. This is birth of a new way, a new hope, a new generation of artists who don't have to apologize for loving out loud. And if I have to be the first, I will be. Because silence has stolen too much already. It stole our rest. It stole our freedom. It almost stole our belief that we could ever be anything other than beautiful puppets in tailored suits. But no more. If you're watching this, if your heart is trembling, it's because you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you're not famous. Maybe you're just someone trying to live honestly in a world that punishes authenticity. But I want you to hear this. You are not alone. Your longing is not a weakness. Your hope is not a fantasy. Your desire for more is not selfish. It is sacred. And it is time. Time to speak. Time to decide. Time to dream out loud. Just like Taehyung did for me. Just like I'm doing now for you. Just like one day I will do for my child. There are moments that don't feel like moments at all. They feel like fractures. Like the very air around you has been split by something unseen, something permanent. You walk into a room expecting routine, but you walk out carrying a wound. That's how this began. With a meeting. A simple meeting. Or at least, that's what they called it. We just want to talk, they said. We value your vision, they smiled. We're here to support you, they promised. But support is a strange word in this world. Support means applause as long as you behave. Support means freedom as long as you don't disrupt the system that profits from your silence. Support means loving the brand of you, not the man behind it. I should have known better, but I showed up anyway. I sat at that long, sleek table, looking into eyes that had known me since I was 15. Eyes that had watched me sweat in rehearsals, watched me cry in silence, watched me carry a nation's pride without ever asking how heavy it was. They didn't look at me like a person that day. They looked at me like a product nearing expiration. They had my last performance numbers printed on paper, social media projections, upcoming brand tie-ins, mentions of contracts, statistics, metrics, graphs, but not a single word about how I was doing. So I spoke first. I told them the truth. That I was thinking about starting a new chapter. Not tomorrow, not in secret, but one day, and not a scandal, not a tabloid headline. Just life. I told them I wanted to be a father someday. I told them I was imagining it more often. That I was thinking about where my future child would live, grow, laugh. I told them I didn't know what country it would be. But I knew I needed space, honest space to breathe. The room went quiet. You would think I had said something violent, something disgraceful. One man cleared his throat. Another looked down at his watch. And then, the one who had always smiled at me the most, leaned forward, folded his hands, and said the words I will never forget. Jungkook, if you want to keep the kind of influence you have, You must never speak about children or marriage again. Ever. Just like that. Cold, surgical, final. He said it as if it were obvious. As if I should be grateful to hear it out loud. As if I should thank him for the warning. He said it with a smile. The same smile he had used when we debuted. The same smile he had used when we won Artist of the Year. The same smile that at once meant pride but now only meant power. I stared at him, and in that moment, I realized something. The system doesn't fear your failure. It fears your fulfillment, because a fulfilled man cannot be manipulated. A fulfilled man stops chasing applause and starts building legacy. A fulfilled man stops selling fantasy and starts choosing truth. And that's dangerous. To them, a father is unpredictable. A husband is unavailable. A man in love is harder to control. So they demand that you stay beautiful, stay accessible, stay desirable, stay lonely. They want you hungry so they can feed you their approval. And I felt it right there in that room. Not anger, not even betrayal, just awakening. I wasn't supposed to be real. I was supposed to be eternal, frozen in time, forever 25, forever smiling, forever Jungkook of BTS, untouched by life's complications. But I'm not frozen. I'm human, and I will not be punished for growing. That meeting ended without resolution. They didn't yell, they didn't threaten, they didn't have to. Their silence said everything. And I walked out of that building knowing one thing. The war for my future had officially begun. Let me ask you something. Has anyone ever told you directly or indirectly that you are not allowed to want more? Not because you can't, but because your wanting threatens their comfort? Maybe it wasn't a boardroom. Maybe it was a dinner table, a classroom, a church, a bedroom. Maybe someone looked you in the eye and said, don't dream that far. Don't want that much. Don't change too fast. And maybe, like me, you stayed silent just to keep the peace. But I'm here to tell you that peace is not peace. It's quiet control, and it is killing you slowly. I didn't speak about that meeting for weeks, not to my members, not to my team, not even to myself, because I needed time to process what it meant. Not just for me, but for all of us. Because if someone can sit across from me after everything I've given and still say, don't speak about a family, then what does that mean for every artist coming after me? What does that mean for every boy who wants to sing but also wants to love? For every girl who wants to dance but also wants to become a mother? Are we raising icons? Or are we raising slaves? I wrestled with that question for days, until one morning, I woke up with a sentence in my chest. You don't need permission to become whole. I wrote it down. I taped it to the mirror, and I read it every morning. Even on the days I didn't believe it. Especially on those days. Because belief is not a switch. It's a seed. You water it, you speak to it, you protect it, and one day, it grows strong enough to hold you when the storm comes. The storm came soon after. Whispers online. Comments turned colder. Sudden cancellations. Soft rejections disguised as scheduling conflicts. I knew what it was. They were reminding me. You don't step outside the system without consequence. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Because when you know what's on the other side of fear, freedom, family, future fear loses its grip. So I kept speaking. Not loudly. Not in press releases. But in private, with my members, with trusted friends, with myself, and now with you, because I believe you are ready to hear it. And maybe you need to hear it. Maybe you've been told your dreams are too much, that your timeline doesn't match the world's expectations, that your joy is inconvenient. But I need you to hear me right now. You are not a threat. You are a mirror. And when people reject your truth, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting the reflection of everything they've repressed. That's not your burden to carry. So put it down and pick up your freedom instead. Pick up your vision. Pick up your voice. Pick up that list you made once quietly in a notebook. No one ever saw the one that said, I want to love without hiding. I want to raise a child who sees me whole. I want to be held for real, not for performance. I want mornings without fear. I want peace. Pick it up again. Look at it. Say it out loud. Because the world is full of systems that want you silent. But it only takes one voice to break the spell. Maybe today, that voice is mine. But tomorrow, maybe it's yours. And the day after that, maybe it belongs to a child not yet born, one who will look back and say, my parent didn't just dream, they built. Sometimes the past doesn't knock. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't give you a warning. It waits quietly until you're tired, tender, vulnerable. And then it arrives, not as a storm, but as a whisper. That's how this chapter started. Not with headlines, not with executives, not with pressure or applause, but with a door, my childhood door. In Busan, it had been years since I visited home, really visited. Not for interviews, not for a public broadcast, not for a stage memory lane special, but just to breathe, just to remember. I don't even know what brought me back. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the longing I couldn't silence anymore. I booked the drive myself. No camera crew, no managers, just me, a hoodie, a quiet car, and the sound of my own heartbeat getting louder with every kilometer. When I stepped out, the air hit differently. Familiar, humble, real. The street hadn't changed much, but I had. I walked past the corner store that used to sell banana milk for 801. Past the alley where I first tried dancing in secret. Past the small park where I once whispered to a girl I liked and then ran away before she could answer. I walked like a ghost, half remembering, half grieving. And then I stood in front of the house. Our house, paint peeling, window curtains swaying, the faint smell of kimchi stew coming from somewhere nearby. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic, but when my mother opened the door and saw me, her face did something I hadn't seen in years. It didn't light up. It didn't perform pride. It softened. She just said, "Come in. You must be cold." And that was it. No questions. No pressure. No, why haven't you come sooner? Just a small bowl of soup on the table and the gesture for me to sit. I did. And for a while, we didn't speak. We just ate. And then she looked at me. Really looked. And she said something I'll never forget. "Your eyes are quieter than they used to be." I asked her what she meant. She stirred her spoon and said, "When you were younger, you used to look like you were running somewhere, even when you were sitting still. Now, you look like you've stopped running. But not because you arrived, because you're tired." I didn't realize I was crying until my spoon slipped from my hand. Because she was right. I hadn't stopped because I reached a dream. I had stopped because the dream had outrun me. And somewhere in the chase, I had lost something I couldn't name. She sat across from me, and for a moment, she wasn't Jungkook's mother. She was just a woman who once held a boy with big dreams and a quiet fear that the world might eat him alive. And in that moment, I asked her the question I hadn't dared to ask in years. "Amma, were you ever scared when I left?" She smiled. "Every day." "Then why did you let me go?" Her answer broke me. "Because I wanted you to know that freedom is worth more than protection." I stared at her, and then I whispered what had been sitting in my chest for months. "I don't think I can raise a family here." She didn't flinch. She didn't scold me. She didn't say, "But Korea made you." She just nodded, and after a long silence, she said, "I left my hometown too. I loved it. But I knew my children couldn't grow there, not the way they needed to." I blinked. I had never heard her say that before. "You did?" I never told anyone, because back then, women weren't supposed to speak about ambition, about fear, about wanting more for their children than tradition could offer. She looked at me gently. "Now you understand." And I did. In that moment, everything clicked. This wasn't just about fame, or music, or even Korea. This was generational, inherited silence. Cultural expectation wrapped in politeness. Shame disguised as tradition. My mother had faced it, and now, so was I. We were both trying to build something freer for the next one. And maybe that's what love really is. Not perfect, not easy, but honest. After that night, I walked through my old room. Everything was smaller. The posters, the desk, the corner where I once rehearsed choreo till my legs gave out. But on the wall taped near my bed was something I had forgotten. A note, my own handwriting, barely legible, probably 14 years old. It said, "One day I'll sing for someone who doesn't need me to be strong, just real." I collapsed onto the floor and let the tears come, because I finally understood what that boy meant. He wasn't talking about fans, or managers, or stages. He was talking about a future love. a child, a home, something rooted, not performed, something honest, not polished. I left Busan the next morning, not broken, but realigned, grounded, and I knew what I had to do. I had to speak louder, not to provoke, but to protect, not just for me, but for the child I had yet to meet, and for the boy I used to be, the boy who believed it was possible. Let me ask you something. Have you forgotten what your younger self once dreamed? Not the filtered dream, not the socially acceptable one, but the real one, the wild, quiet, fearless dream. Have you buried it? Do you still believe it? Because I'm telling you right now, somewhere in your past is the blueprint for your healing. Somewhere in your silence is the song you were born to sing. Don't let the world edit it out of you. Don't let fear redact the parts of you that still believe. I know it's hard. I know the cost. But I also know this. If I don't speak now, my child might grow up in the same silence that nearly swallowed me. And I will not let that happen. Even if it means walking away from comfort. Even if it means being misunderstood. Even if it means beginning again. Because home is not a place. It's a future you choose again and again with love. And I choose that future. Freely. Fully. Finally. There's something about small children that disarms you. Not just because they're innocent, but because they're honest. They don't perform. They don't posture. They don't know how to hide what they feel. And when you've spent your whole life pretending, performing, polishing every sentence for public consumption, that kind of honesty feels like an earthquake. That's what this chapter is about. Not a scandal. Not a press release. Not a decision I made behind the scenes. But a moment I lived. One that changed everything. It happened in another country. I won't say which one, not yet, because this story isn't about geography. It's about contrast. And sometimes, contrast is what reveals the cracks you've learned to ignore. We had just finished a recording session, something low-key, off-grid, far from Seoul, far from the cameras. I was walking alone, hoodie up, mask on, trying to clear my head. And then I heard laughter. Not the forced kind, not the rehearsed kind. The kind that bubbles from the chest. Unfiltered. Full. I looked over and saw it. A preschool. Nothing special. A small building. A modest playground. Crayons scattered across a wooden table. But it pulled me in like gravity. I kept my distance. I stayed behind the low fence. But I watched. Watched a boy trip and fall, and then laugh before getting up again. Watched a girl walk up to her teacher and wrap her arms around her legs, for no reason other than affection. Watched a group of them draw wildly on paper, no pressure to make it beautiful, just joy in motion. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something stir in me. Not longing, but courage. Because until that moment, fatherhood had always been a theory. A dream wrapped in fear. A vision I loved from a distance, but didn't dare touch. But watching those kids, something changed. I didn't see danger. I didn't see risk. I saw possibility, not perfection, just life. Messy, loud, honest, real. And then I saw something else. A father, kneeling beside his child. No cameras, no security, no judgment, just presence. He wasn't giving advice. He wasn't correcting behavior. He was just there, hands in the dirt, eyes on his son, heart wide open. And something in me cracked. Not because I envied him, but because I saw myself, not the idol, not the performer, the man, the one who had been hiding behind layers of someday. I took out my phone. I almost filmed it, not to post, just to remember, but I didn't, because some things are too sacred for screens. I stood there longer than I intended, long enough for a teacher to notice me. She didn't recognize me, just a tall guy in a hoodie, standing too still. She came over, smiled politely, and said, "You okay?" I nodded, then surprised myself by whispering, "I think I want to be a father." She blinked, surprised, maybe confused. But then she said something I didn't expect. "You'd be good at it. You look like someone who's learning how to listen." I didn't answer, but those words followed me all the way back to my hotel. You look like someone who's learning how to listen. And maybe that's what fatherhood really is. Not providing, not protecting, but listening to a life you helped create, to a soul you're still learning to understand. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of it. I was ready. Or at least, ready to try. That night, I wrote a letter. I don't know who it was for. Maybe my future child. Maybe myself. Maybe both. It said, I used to think being a good father meant having all the answers. Now I think it means being willing to grow beside you every single day. I didn't cry writing it. I smiled, because I knew what I was writing wasn't a confession. It was a declaration. I am ready. Not perfectly, but honestly, and that's more than I could say even a year ago. Let me ask you something. What are you finally ready to admit? Not to the world, to yourself. Maybe it's that you want more. Maybe it's that you're done pretending. Maybe it's that your dreams have changed, and that's okay. Say it. Write it, even if your hands shake. Because clarity comes in motion, not perfection. That preschool, it didn't give me a roadmap, but it gave me a mirror. And in that mirror, I saw a man I could finally respect. A man willing to trade applause for presence, headlines for home, performance for peace. I know not everyone will understand. Some will say I'm walking away from something millions would die for. But what they don't realize is I already died for it. I sacrificed my adolescence, my privacy, my right to be confused, to fail, to love openly. So no, I'm not walking away. I'm walking towards something deeper, towards something freer. And yes, maybe that means walking away from the only system I've ever known. But systems don't raise children. Fathers do. And I want to be a good one. Even if I have to unlearn everything I've been taught about what success looks like. Even if I have to move to a place where my name doesn't matter. Even if I have to be forgotten. Because love is not built on legacy. It's built on presence. That's what I learned behind that preschool fence. Not from books. Not from stylists. From laughter. From dirt. From one child falling and laughing anyway. And I thought, if I can raise a child who laughs when they fall, then maybe I've done enough. Maybe that's what the future is really about. Not being worshipped, but being with. The truth doesn't always arrive in loud moments. Sometimes it shows up in ink. Sometimes it's folded neatly in an envelope, waiting on a desk you've been too afraid to clean. This chapter begins with a letter. A real letter, not an email. Not a Wever's post. Not a contract wrapped in clauses and deadlines. Paper. Ink. Wait. From Hyung. The one who always carried us with laughter. The one who kept the house light. The one who went to serve first, not just because he had to, but because he wanted to lead with grace. He sent it without ceremony. No warning. No build-up. Just a staffer handing it to me one morning, saying, Hyung asked that you get this directly. The envelope was plain. No perfume, no stickers, just my name. In his handwriting, Jungkook. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on my piano for 3 days, because something about it felt sacred, heavy, final. When I finally opened it, I did it at night. Alone, no music, no distractions, just the hum of the city outside and the sound of my own breath getting slower with each line. I won't share the entire letter. Some things are not for public consumption. But I will tell you the part that undid me. When I was your age, I thought legacy was about what you left behind for the world. But now, in uniform, with no spotlight, no stage, I've started to wonder if legacy is really about what you leave behind for one person, one child, one heart, something smaller, but more eternal. I paused. Read it again and again, because those words didn't sound like a soldier. They sounded like a father, a man who had stripped away the idol, the singer, the brand, and met himself as a soul. He continued, You've been asking the same question I've been afraid to say out loud. What if we gave everything to the world, but forgot to give something to someone? I folded the paper, stared at the ceiling, and cried in silence, because for the first time, I understood what had been haunting me since this journey began. I had been loved by millions, adored, immortalized in photos and stages and digital archives. But I had never been held in the quiet way, the everyday way, the don't perform for me, just breathe next to me kind of way. And I wondered, what's the point of a legacy if there's no one to whisper it to when the lights go out? Let me ask you something. Have you been measuring your worth by numbers? Likes? Followers? Revenue? Do you feel accomplished but not anchored? Visible but not seen? I know that feeling. It's the loneliness that hides behind metrics. It's the emptiness that applause can't reach. And Jin's letter cracked it open. Because it reminded me that meaning isn't mass-produced. It's handcrafted. In kitchens, in bedtime stories, in holding someone's hand when they're too young to understand but feel safe anyway. That's legacy. Not stadiums, but footsteps following yours down a hallway at night. I wrote back to him, not digitally. Pen, paper, because some responses deserve weight. I told him, Hyung, I think I've been trying to outrun emptiness with noise, but noise can't raise a child. Noise can't hold a woman's heart. Noise can't look back at me when I'm 70 and say, thank you for staying. And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid to say those words because they weren't weakness. They were alignment. We were never meant to live for headlines. We were meant to live for closeness. Quiet things, intimate things, the kinds of things that never trend but never fade. I've been thinking about that letter ever since. I keep it in my nightstand, not as motivation, as grounding, because when the world gets loud, I need something to remind me that I'm allowed to want small, beautiful, ordinary things. A child's drawing on the fridge. A wife who laughs when I burn the rice. A morning without schedules. An evening with music no one hears but us. Tell me what's on your fridge. Not literally. I mean the part of you that dreams small. The part that wants to bake instead of broadcast. To tuck someone in instead of trend. To build something no one sees, but you know it's real. Write it down. Don't let the world shame you for wanting quiet, because that's where the sacred lives. I know now, because I almost lost it. I almost traded fatherhood for followers. Almost sold love for legacy. But Jin's letter pulled me back. And now, I'm choosing a different future. One not written in ink contracts, but in crayon. One not performed on stage, but lived on kitchen floors. And you can too, even if you're not famous. Even if your silence isn't broadcast. Even if your fears don't go viral. You are allowed to change your definition of success. You are allowed to choose a future that doesn't impress anyone, but feeds your soul. You are allowed to choose the ordinary and call it holy. There's a kind of silence that isn't empty. It's not the silence of absence. It's the silence right before the tide shifts. Right before 1,000 hearts speak at once without shouting. That silence found me in the middle of a quiet night. Not in a stadium, not on a live stream, but in the way that real truth arrives, slow, humble, almost afraid to knock. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't even checking. It had been days since I posted anything personal. Weeks, even. After the letter from Jin, after the preschool moment, after Busan, I had gone inward. Not to hide, but to listen, and then without fanfare, it happened. A single message from a fan. No edits, no hashtags, no performance. Just this. If being free means we lose you on stage, we'll still be here when you find yourself again. I read it twice, and then a third time, because for so long I had been holding my breath, wondering when the turning would come, when the affection would shift into resentment, when the loyalty would become distance. Because idols aren't supposed to evolve. They're supposed to orbit, to shine predictably, to stay frozen in the version people fell in love with. But this message, this one sentence, was something different. It wasn't saying, come back. It was saying, go ahead. It wasn't clinging. It was releasing. And in that release, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Hope. I clicked on the profile. Not a famous fan base leader, not a trend starter. Just a person. A real person from a small city I've never been to. A mother based on her bio. A woman who wrote me a message that echoed louder than the stadiums. And then I noticed something else. It wasn't just her. There were hundreds, thousands. Quiet messages, gentle truths. Not all perfect, not all clean, but real. I cried reading your words. I'm a single father. I get it now. I stopped listening for a while, but this pulled me back. My husband never understood why I love BTS. But today, I showed him your letter. He said, That boy's going to make a good father. I used to want you to stay golden. Now I want you to be at peace. I read until sunrise. No makeup, no camera, just me and them. And the unbearable truth that maybe, just maybe, I hadn't lost the ones who mattered. Let me ask you something. Have you ever assumed you'd be abandoned if you changed? Have you ever swallowed your truth because you thought honesty would make people leave? That was me. For years, I smiled in the face of assumptions, performed while grieving, signed while suffocating, because I believed the narrative that said, if you stop giving, they'll stop staying. But that night alone with those messages, I learned something else. When you give your truth instead of your performance, the real ones don't leave. They lean in. And maybe you need to hear that too. Maybe you've been shrinking, diluting yourself, editing your dreams, to stay accepted, to stay wanted. But I'm telling you, the ones meant to walk with you won't be threatened by your growth. They will see it as freedom. And the ones who can't, let them go. They weren't clapping for you. They were clapping for the version of you that never dared to grow. So grow anyway. The morning after those messages, I did something I hadn't done since we debuted. I walked outside. No mask, no disguise, no staff, just me. I bought flowers for myself, not for an event, not for a video shoot, for no reason except to honor the man I was becoming. The man who was slowly learning that visibility and vulnerability are not the same. The man who had been loved from afar, but now wanted to be known up close. And I wrote a short caption on my private journal page, just 6 words. Maybe I won't be alone after all. It's strange, isn't it? How one message from a stranger can feel more intimate than a room full of applause. But that's what truth does. It collapses the distance. It replaces fan with friend, performer with person. And now, I don't fear the shift. I welcome it, because the bond we had, it was never just about choreography. It was never just about matching outfits and fan chants. It was about resonance. And resonance survives reinvention. It might even depend on it. So to the fans who see me, really see me, thank you. Not for staying, but for evolving. Not for clapping, but for listening. Not for owning me, but for freeing me. I promise this. Whatever I build next, whether music, a home, a family, it will carry your fingerprints. Because without your permission, without your quiet understanding, I might have stayed silent forever. If you're watching this, it means I did it. It means I left. It means I chose. It means I started the life I used to whisper about when the world was too loud to hear me. And it means you're here, somewhere. Maybe in my arms, maybe not born yet. Maybe watching this years from now, curious about who your father used to be before he became Appa. So I want to say this clearly. This message is for you, not the fans, not the headlines, not the system that tried to keep me frozen in time. You, my child, my reason, my beginning. I need you to know something before the world teaches you to forget. You were never the complication. You were never the detour.